Welcome to Veteran Resource Podcast, where you will meet nonprofit organizations focused on improving the lives of veterans and their family members. Here is your host, Jeremy Paris.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 102 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris. Before we get into today's interview, just wanted to remind you that I have a Patreon page now. You could be a patron, and you can check out all of the information about that at patreon.com/Jeremy Paris. That's patreon.com/Jeremy Paris. There's some cool rewards in there. I've got an Ask Me Anything that's going to be going on every month for any of the patrons at the $10 level. So definitely go and check that out. Today's episode is really cool. I talk with Corey Christman. We talk a little bit about the value of a veteran, and we also talk a little bit about some wine. So if you're a fan of wine like me, you're going to like this episode even more. Corey Christman serves as the Chief Executive Officer of Vethos, LLC, a human capital leadership and executive strategy firm. He served in executive level capacity for 15 plus years and led teams comprised of 3 members to over 500 in size. He's the recipient of numerous awards for leadership, human resource management, and innovation. He holds an MBA in entrepreneurship and BA in criminal justice, and will complete the executive leadership program at Cornell University in the spring of 2017. He's a retired supervisory special agent, United States Air Force Office of Special Investigations, and also served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. He's a professionally trained winemaker. He works within the Finger Lakes wine region of New York State, and he will be launching his own veteran first responder focused wine label in 2017. Since retiring in 2012, he's worked within the veteran advocacy space and is currently partnered with several key leaders to raise awareness for mental and behavioral health for first responders nationwide. All right, let's jump right into the interview. Corey, welcome to the Veteran Resource Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
You've got a lot of different things going on, a lot of different activities, and I'm excited to be talking about a lot of them. But let's kind of get just a brief overview of your background.
Sure. I'm an Air Force guy. Grew up along the shores of Lake Ontario in New York. Entered the Air Force in 1992. Retired in February of 2012. It's hard to believe it's been 5 years. Time's certainly flown by. Most of my career, I was a special agent with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. So I did your traditional criminal investigations. Then after 9/11, of course, our mission kind of changed, and we became more focused on counterintelligence and counterterrorism. So served in various capacities, various installations around the country. And like I said, I retired in 2012. And since that time frame, I've worked in the veteran space, started a couple businesses myself, and just been trying to advocate for veterans as well.
Very nice. And you said you grew up around Lake Erie along the coastline there. What area exactly?
Yeah, it was actually Lake Ontario. If I said Lake Erie, I apologize. But Lake Ontario. It's a little town called Oswego, New York. It's one of the areas that is most widely known for heavy amounts of snowfall in the winter. So.
Yeah, I think I had some buddies that used to go there fishing all the time.
Yeah, it's a great fishing spot too. One of the snowiest places east of the Rockies. So we get our fair share, that's for sure.
Are you're still in that area?
I split time between Pennsylvania and the Finger Lakes of New York. And one of my businesses is I'm in the wine business. So right now I'm kind of splitting time at both locations. So
Yeah, I definitely want to dive into the winemaking there. That's
yeah.
I'm
Well,
I'm a good customer of wine, let's say.
yeah. Good deal. Good deal.
So okay, let's just jump in and start talking about wine first. Let's get it out of the way.
Sure.
So
Sure.
so you're launching your own veteran first responder focused wine label, is that correct?
Yeah, that's the goal. I got bitten by the wine bug probably about 7 years ago now, and like most, wine drinkers, I said, yeah, I got this bright idea of let me try to make my own, and started making it in the garage, and I thought I knew a little bit about wine, and so fast forward about 5 years later, and I was able to land a internship at one of the premier wineries in the Finger Lakes in New York, and the rest is kind of history. I was able to work harvests, and I was able to actually spend some time in the vineyards. And during that time frame, I received a graduate certificate from Washington State University in enology or winemaking, and
Wow.
just have had been exposed to some fantastic people up there. And so by the end of this year, our goal is to bring the label online, and the first production is going to be pretty small, but got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, I'll be expecting a bottle heading my way.
That's the least I can do. Least I can do.
So why is it that the Finger Lakes are so good for growing the grapes for wine?
Well, I can tell you, I'm a big fan of many wine regions, but when I decided that I was going to venture out into the wine business, I actually flew out and met with a fellow veteran winemaker named Dave Grega, and he was actually in Napa. So he gave me a tour and showed me the ropes. Said, "Hey, man, pack up your stuff, come out here to Napa, and I'll help you get going." And that certainly was a great opportunity, but I've always had a calling for the state of New York and the Finger Lakes. And most people don't understand the quality and kind of the evolution of what's happening in the Finger Lakes. But some of the best, white wines in the country actually come from, New York State.
Wow.
And it's everything from Rieslings to Pinot Gris to Chardonnays. And I have a calling, to be in that area. I love New York State, quite frankly.
Yeah. And so this is going to go to also help veterans and first responders. Is that how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. As someone who kind of wore both hats, both from a veteran standpoint and a law enforcement standpoint, I want to celebrate both of those professions. And one of the other projects I'm working on is also raising awareness for behavioral health and wellness for both first responders and veterans. And so a portion of our proceeds will actually go to that cause.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
We're gonna circle back around now to Vethos. This is a firm that you started. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I had the opportunity to do some consulting with various companies, and very quickly I learned that there's really an absolute need for what the military and Uncle Sam was able to provide me by the way of organizational development, leadership, human resource emphasis, and I've been able to inject a lot of that into various businesses and seen positive results. So, I started this company, and we use behavioral analytics to help companies hire people based upon how they are, their DNA, and not necessarily what their resume says. And so just been able to do a lot of fantastic things for businesses around the Northeast right now. So.
Oh, that's great. And that is a big problem that a lot of veterans coming out of the military have, is that their resume doesn't translate to what they are as a person, what they've have to offer.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jeremy. And I spend a lot of time working with human resource professionals. I'm passionate about veterans because our country right now needs value in the middle class, right? They need, whether you're a small business or a medium-sized business, you're concerned about the bottom line. You're concerned about what kind of value am I getting for my employees. And so whenever I have someone who's willing to listen, I offer, the veteran employee as an opportunity for them. Put aside what you hear about, the post-traumatic stress, and put aside what you hear about, military skills translation. And if you really are serious about value and you're really serious about growing your culture, let's get some veterans, at least to the table for an interview.
Yeah. And what makes a veteran so valuable?
I can tell you, we, as you're very well aware, I mean, oftentimes we hear about the leadership skills veterans bring, and those certainly are fantastic, right? You take a veteran who might be 20 years old, an individual that was serving in the military, 20 years old, and right away they're leading people. They're responsible for, in some cases, millions of dollars worth of equipment, and they're doing great things. That absolutely translates into a civilian company, regardless of size. But I like to remind people who aren't familiar with the military that, veterans, regardless of whether they were officers or enlisted, they were followers first, right? They first had to learn how to take direction. They first had to learn how to listen actively. They first had to learn how to set goals and achieve them. So while their leadership is fantastic, you're really getting an employee who understands strategic planning and operational planning and tactical execution. You're getting an employee that wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. They're not asking for preferential treatment. They're not asking for anything extra, but they're asking for the opportunity to compete for a position.
Right. And something else that a lot of people don't understand is that for 99% or more, I would say, of veterans out there, their entire being is built on top of a foundation of service. They're all about serving, and you see this when they get out of the military as well. That sense of service doesn't go away. That's why so many of these organizations out there are being led by veterans that go back into a job once they get out, where they can continue to serve other people, continue to serve their fellow veterans, or just in the communities. So if you've got one of these veterans working for your company and they're dedicated to what it is you're doing, they're going to be all about serving your customer.
Right. And your customer service is right tantamount to success in any business, right? And sometimes what's get lost in translation is that whether you're a small business or a medium-sized business, we have both internal and external customers. And we talk about growing cultures and taking businesses from average levels of success to, greater levels of success. Those veterans, those people that can be chameleons and work with people from various parts of the world, they are going to be the ones that help these companies grow. and to sustain that growth. I mean, there's never been a better time for companies in our country to bring veterans into their cultures. It's really that simple.
Absolutely. Some veterans still have some, some challenges once they get out, but there's lots of, between the VA and lots of these nonprofit organizations, they're able to overcome those obstacles. So what would you say to anybody who's listening who has a company that's thinking about hiring a veteran that is worried about these challenges that they have?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, any of your listeners, any of your companies who are, any of their companies who are serious about hiring veterans, I will help them. I will volunteer my services to help them. If they're not familiar with how to hire veterans, if they're not maybe sure where to go, I will gladly be that conduit for them. But, one of the things that they have to remember is that they may not ever understand what it means to be a veteran. There's many companies that offer training courses for companies that don't have veterans on their staff. They offer familiarization training. But, these companies, what I encourage companies to do is just make a decision, right? Make a decision that you're going to diversify your workforce and bring veterans in, all right? And I know that sounds kind of simple, but right now there's this back and forth between HR professionals and some hiring managers and veterans, right? HR professionals are saying, we need you to translate your military skills into a resume that we can understand. Veterans are saying, well, we haven't necessarily worked in the civilian workforce, in some cases 20 years. We don't know how to do that, right? So there's this back and forth. And what I encourage these companies to do is just say, listen, we understand that we have to come to a common ground. But oftentimes what these companies are doing, if they don't have a resume that they feel is translated successfully, they're setting that resume to the side and they're moving on to someone else. So if you want to do something, listen, if you review that resume and it appears that that veteran has the requisite skills and that they are presenting themselves as qualified, but there's questions, commit to interviewing that veteran. Commit to bringing that veteran in or calling them telephonically and saying, hey, listen, thank you for sending this resume. We'd like to learn more. Can you help us understand, what it is that you did, right? That little step, right, can go such a long ways. And, I've raised this point in the past and some HR professionals have said, well, I have 100 resumes. How can I do this, right? And that is I understand that. So maybe for some positions, you can't always take these steps that I just mentioned. But if you're truly committed to hiring veterans and you make that decision that I mentioned, I think you begin to find ways to overcome these perceived obstacles.
And I was looking a little bit at Vethos. I saw that you also work with behavioral analytics and different techniques like that. How does that come into play?
Yeah, so in a traditional setting, right, we have people that will apply, they'll be scanning and looking for a job. They'll go through the application process. If they meet the minimum requirements, in many cases they're interviewed and hopefully they get the job. Well, what we're seeing now is if you've are familiar with some of the statistics, 60 to 70% of people that leave companies are leaving because of poor cultures and ineffective supervisors and leadership. So what my goal is to try to help these companies, first of all, understand who they have, right, from a behavioral standpoint on their team, right, understand their strengths and weaknesses from a C-suite perspective. It's not uncommon for executives to have, many personalities that are all driving forward and not necessarily focused on the details. So we help them to understand, hey, listen, you've got to be detail-centered and focused. And then we help them to actually craft development plans on how to lead their teams based upon how their employees are instead of based upon how they perceive them to be.
Interesting. And so looking at these analytics that can be ascertained, I guess?
Right. So you take there's about a 7-minute assessment that you go through, and it's a free choice assessment. So I don't know how familiar you are with the behavioral assessments. There's many out there, approximately 800 or so that are available in the world right now. But the one that I use is actually called the Predictive Index. And so you spend about 5 minutes and you get a snapshot of how you are from a DNA perspective. Are you someone that can lead, various teams, or are you someone that prefers to work in a position that's more repetitive and not as hard charging? Companies need all kinds of people, right? There's no good and bad, it's how we are. But when we start allowing our biases to come in and we start allowing our perceptions of people to come in, and then we, try to lead people based upon those, can really get into a bad way very quickly.
Absolutely. Is there any specific questions that you would recommend to companies to ask veterans when they're interviewing?
Yeah, I think the big thing is if they have questions on a resume, right? They need to ask a veteran that they believe is qualified. Hey, what is it that you hoped to bring to our organization? They need to have a conversation with the veteran as much as they need to interview them, right? Because sometimes we get into this formalized, checklist type of an interview, and if you're an HR professional and you have 10 interviews to do in a short period of time, it's very easy to understand why that would be. But if you truly want to understand what the veteran's bringing, have a conversation with them. Ask them to emphasize some of what they were able to do in the military and why they think it's important to the organization they're applying for. This isn't a free pass for veterans. Veterans have to be prepared, right? They have to understand the company that they're going to. They have to understand what the mission and vision is of that company. And they have to be able to articulate why they want to work there.
Just to be clear here, Vethos, you're working directly with the companies, or you're working directly with the veterans, or both?
It tends to be both. I work with veterans who are just trying to help me to understand what my strengths are, and help me to understand jobs that I might not necessarily be the best at, right? And that's huge for veterans and anyone, because we may think that we want to do marketing, right? And we've gone to school for marketing, and come to find out, we're not necessarily the type of person who likes to do those extroverted kind of parts of the business, going out, interfacing with, prospective clients and whatnot. We prefer to be more in the office. The time to find that out is sooner than later. So from an individual perspective, I help veterans and non-veterans understand how they are. And from a company perspective, we're able to, again, do some of the things that I mentioned previously.
What would you recommend to veterans when they're in the interview? Is there anything specific that they should be doing or shouldn't be doing during the interview?
Sure. That's a fantastic question. First and foremost, we can't lose sight of the fact that we are interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing us. And why that is important to the veteran is you want to leave time, and you want to have questions prepared to ask your interviewer. And for those folks that are interested, I've published some LinkedIn articles specifically on questions that are I think that are vital to ask and to understand. An example of those question would be, the veteran needs to ask the interviewer, can you talk to me about your culture here at place X, wherever they're at? Describe their culture. And probably what's going to happen when they ask that question, there's going to be a long pause, because culture is it's an intangible thing, right? But don't fill that void. Let the person think about it and answer, because the veterans need to understand exactly what they're getting into by, attempting to work at this office. Sometimes we have this natural tendency to just be thankful that we have an interview, right? We're thankful, almost become subservient to a certain extent by just let me say everything that I think the person wants to hear, and we forget about what's important to us as well. So in addition to the culture question, ask them what kind of emphasis do you place on personal development of the employee? What kind of transition will you offer me as a new employee coming into your organization? Because if you're a veteran and this is your first job, since you were in the military, whether you realize it or not, there's going to be some challenges there, right? There's going to be some challenges of going from known to unknown. So you want to understand from a veteran standpoint, what services do you have? Are you just going to hire me and set me at my desk? Or are you just going to hire me and send me out to the field? What does that look like? So those questions are very important for veterans to consider and to ask, and you might also want to ask, do you support philanthropy? What are you doing to give back to our community? You don't want to ask these questions in a way that seems to be anything other than inquisitive. We don't want to be like confrontational or anything like that. We just want to, I guess the moral to the story is prepare yourself for the interview, but also know that at the conclusion, you want to have enough information to decide if this place of business, this place of employment is someplace that you could see yourself working.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. And that, you're not going there hat in hand begging for them to give you something. You're trying to see if they're a fit for you as well.
Sure. And that, I think sometimes that gets, can get underestimated. We see I think when I was working in the veterans space, primarily we were doing studies with Syracuse University and the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. And I think at the time, you had a higher than 50%, over 50% of our respondents reported leaving their first job within 18 months because it wasn't a good fit for them. And I think if we spend a little time and we prepare ourselves, we maybe can improve that percentage.
I think a lot of that too, like I know for me personally, when I got out, there was a little bit of a panic where, I can't go without having money. I didn't have retirement or anything. I got out after 10 years. And so I got out with pretty much nothing. And I have to have income coming in from the day that I step out. Money has to be coming in or, I'm screwed. So knowing that, I went after a job. I didn't go after the job or even the direction that, I knew that I wanted to be in technology. And so I started to look for that. And the very first job that was offered to me, I jumped on. And it's funny because one of the things that I wanted to get away from when I was in the military, I was in the Brigade S1. I was normally sitting at a cubicle, and I said, I can't be in a cubicle anymore. I went in the Army because I wanted to be a soldier, and here I am in a cubicle. So I'm getting out of the military so that I don't have to do this anymore. And immediately go into a cubicle for the next 16 years. Like,
sure.
because I wasn't paying attention to what it was that I wanted. I just wanted a job.
Right. And I can tell you, Jeremy, that's a tough question to answer, right? We talked about going from known to unknown, and one of the first questions that many veterans are asked are, what do you want to do? Well, for the past 8, 10, 12, 20 years, whatever it was, what I wanted to do wasn't always at the forefront of my decision making. It was about what I did or what my mission was. So now veterans are faced with this opportunity of deciding, hey, what do I want to do? Well, that's not always the easiest question to answer. It's when we talk about jobs, one thing I want to mention, make sure we discuss is there is no greater opportunity for veterans right now. Some might say World War II veterans had a lot of opportunity, but I can't overstate the importance for veterans to network when it comes to job hunting, right? And what that means very simply is calling people, emailing people, talking to people that you've met along your journey and asking them, can you help me find a job? And that question, can you help me? Right? Many veterans aren't comfortable with asking that question because we've been the one to give the help, so it doesn't always come very easily. But anything you can do to circumvent that resume process, that the process that many veterans continue to struggle with, please, don't be shy. Ask for help, and you'd be surprised how many people will move heaven and earth to help you.
Absolutely. And there's lots of great organizations out there that can help out in different ways, from mentorships to just networking in general. Like if you get in with Team Red, White, and Blue, for instance, just to pick one, they've got locations all over the place, and it has nothing to do with job placement or anything like that, but they're getting together in the community with veterans and non-veterans alike, and doing things like running or rock climbing and paddle boarding and things like that. You're gonna make some new friends, and your network is gonna grow through them.
Yeah, that's great point. I can't overemphasize that enough. I think you hit the nail on the head there, and also take advantage of the organizations like the Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University. If you're interested in starting your own business and you're in the technology field, there's Techstars Patriot Boot Camp. There's Stanford Ignite if you are interested. And on the West Coast, there's so many opportunities for veteran business owners. If you even think that entrepreneurship is something that you want to take a look at, again, reach out to me. I have connections and various venues across the country. I'll be happy to help.
And speaking of that, what is the best way for the listeners to get in contact with you?
They can reach me at my website, which is myvethos.com, myvethos.com. They can hook up with me on LinkedIn, just Corey Christman on LinkedIn. My email is just Corey, Corey, at myvethos.com. And like I said, I'm not trying to make money off this. I want to remove the barriers that have decreased in size over the past 5 to 7 years, but that are still there to help veterans find jobs.
Excellent. And I'll make sure that I put those in the show notes, make it super easy. People can just go there, click on it, and get connected with you to further their way down the career path. Yeah.
Like I said, man, it's tough. And for those people on active duty who might still be listening, or might be listening, don't underestimate the transition, but also don't shy away from it. There's so many opportunities out there right now.
Yeah, and there are a lot of businesses that would absolutely love to get connected with veterans and bring them onto their team.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're doing, Jeremy. Like I said, you've interviewed some real heavy hitters in the veteran space and beyond, and hopefully your listeners can really, benefit. I know they're benefiting from what you're doing, so thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed talking to Corey. I think I'm going to go and grab a glass of wine now, relax a little bit, and enjoy the rest of my day. I hope that everybody out there listening enjoys your day as well. And if you like this episode, you like this podcast, you feel that I'm providing you some value, please go and check out the Patreon page. It's at patreon.com/Jeremy Paris. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week for episode 103.